What up, everybody? And welcome to Late Night Live number 116. What's going on, Olivia? Hello, FG. What up, Z? And what's going on, Benny? Welcome, everybody. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Tuesday evening, or whatever time of the day / morning / day it is for you where you live. We're just gonna write a little bit today. What are we writing? I don't really know yet. I gotta figure that out still. I'm open to suggestions. How was the conference? The conference was awesome. It was a very, very good convention. I don't want to gush about it too much for those that weren't there. I don't want you to feel bad. But I mean, AMP is always a good time. It's always fun. Everybody who was there, cool people. Everybody who wasn't there, also cool people. But no, it was a great convention. No stress, no flooding hotel. We did have a couple drops coming from the roof one night when it was raining, but not like we had in Omaha where we flooded we didn't, but when the whole entire hotel flooded. No, it was dope. It was a nice size hotel. I had a really good time. I thought it was not a lot could have been changed to make the convention really any better this year. I think it was a really awesome one. What's going on, Skeet? What up, Jay? What up, Shake MD? Shake MD? Shaq MD? Shaqmada. You I like Shaqmada, but you let me know how I am to pronounce your name, and I will potentially not remember, but I will try. My vote, obviously, Shaqmada, because that's fun. Even though it's probably MD for medical doctor. But... Whoa, my stirrer's going crazy. Chill out, stirrer. Shaq. Alright, we can do Shaq. Very fine lines. Writing in white today. I was gonna do black ink today. I was in the mood for black ink on ivory paper, but with my sharpened nib, the black ink is just really, really, really hard to see. So I kind of don't have a choice anymore. I kind of have to use white. I'm trying to get out of the habit of, happened a little bit on this one, getting this ending of this one. I'm doing a reversed oval shade. So not a stem shade, not like this. Not an asymmetrical stem shade that starts at the halfway point, but an oval shade where the whole oval should be shaded from top to bottom. Whoops, that's not how to do it. I lose, yeah, see this one a little bit. You get this like weird shape rather than it continuing in the oval shape. So that's what I'm working on, smoothing out a little bit right now. So when I do capital Z's, for example, they look a little bit nicer. I just would like that shade to look a little more like, oops. Something more like that, so it's nice and smooth the whole way around. Well, hello, Carlo. Hello, Hong Kong. For anybody who wasn't on the, or who isn't on the Discord, we've been chatting recently, and Sig Slingin' Sunday is coming back. Sig Slingin' Sunday is gonna be happening starting, I guess, this coming Sunday. Hello, Sally. This coming Sunday will be our first one of this series. We haven't done one for a number of months. We're gonna do Canon or Canon edition. So we're gonna do either 1 or 2 months of signatures by the one and only CC Canon. I'm quite excited to do them. I find his signatures incredibly difficult. Not design-wise, they're very beautiful design-wise, but the forms and the flourishes are round more so than ovoid. So it's quite a challenge. It requires a lot of control, but also a lot of fluidity. So I'm quite excited. See, there, we got that weird shape. I don't want that shape. This conference was great. Kahlo, who's in the chat, is a member of our board at the International Association of Master Penmen now. She joined the board this summer, which is pretty exciting. Why? That's what we want. Yes, I feel like a lot of Canon signatures could definitely look like they're sponsored by the mouse for sure. He has that one exit flourish that is very, very much Disney-esque. Thank you very much, Sally. I'm excited. It's a lot of pressure, but it's exciting. Next year's gonna be a good one. Jennifer Cappy's gonna put on a pretty good event, I imagine. If you're watching this, you're not in the chat, or you're watching this later and you don't know what we're talking about the annual conference or convention of the International Association of Master Penmen, Engrossers, and Teachers of Handwriting. It is a week of classes and social hanging out. For me personally, it's the social atmosphere, the social aspect of AMP is what I love the most about it. It is just a fun time to hang out with people who love penmanship and calligraphy. Meet people from all over the world. I believe Kahlo can correct me. We had, was it 5 people from Hong Kong this year? Which is, I think, the most we've ever had come from Hong Kong to convention. That's pretty awesome. Keeps digging into the paper. Six, including you. Oh, wow. That's pretty sweet. Hong Kong in the house. I don't actually know the total number. I think it was just below 300, but don't quote me on that. I don't remember exactly how many people were there. But I know it was close to 300, but I don't know if we went over 3 this year. I know Scranton was a little bit harder for some people to get to compared to some previous cities. So it made it difficult for some people to make it. Possible that the angle on my camera has changed. I feel like I want to be writing at this angle, but that's uphill for my camera. Did my camera move, or did I change? Maybe I've changed. Yeah, this feels fair. Well, we'll leave it. For now, maybe I'll change it later. Thanks, Soldier Swinny. That is me. I'm not the vice president though. I am the second vice president currently. Next year, I will be made the vice president. So in 2025, I will be vice president. But I'm not yet the VP. I guess VP is not as a definitely vice president, but I guess it could. Not sure. They might have left or they might be writing. This nib loses its hairline every once in a while, which I'm not a super huge fan of. I don't know why it's doing that. Yeah, this nib is potentially slightly too fine, but also my ink has been sitting without a lid on it for a little while, or for quite a while. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to my ink and see if that helps a bit. I think that's also why it's been sputtering. It's splashing ink droplets all over the side of my desk, which is not ideal. Just a little bit of water. I still need to find a controller for my ink stirrer that will allow it to go slightly, just ever so slightly slower than it goes now. It can go much faster than it goes now, but I need it to go a little slower because it gets a little out of control sometimes. Unfortunately, we'll see how this water affects things. Doesn't help, I will burnish the tip of the nib a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna smooth the tip a little bit. Well, hello, Mr. Grimes. Congratulations on your graduation ceremony the other day. Sorry I wasn't able to attend. What is this? Only 16 minutes late. There's no such thing as late for Late Night Live. I don't remember the exact quote, but we're like wizards. We arrive precisely when we mean to. We're always on time. I don't think tonight's stream's gonna be a 6-hour one. Although now that I'm back in town for a while, maybe I should schedule another one of those stream like that. We did the last long one was writing Little Red Riding Hood. What's another story like Little Red Riding Hood that we could write during a stream, do you think? You know, David, I think that's how a lot of people, most people, I think, feel about most things. I think it's really easy to overstress about all that kind of stuff. Running an event, putting on an event, planning something. But it never ends up requiring stress. They're usually just good. Which I'm glad to hear was a fun time. Subtle difference of connective angles in L versus B minuscules. I do take requests. I mean, basically I take anything. I'm just kind of hanging out. So if people ask questions, I answer them. If people have requests, I often will do them. My thoughts about the subtle difference in connective angles in the L versus B. Are you talking specifically about the like undercurve connective into the L and the B or out of the L and B? I'm assuming out because in is the same. At least in my head it's the same. I'm guessing you mean... yeah. Like if we just do 2 ascenders here. So... so the main, I guess if it's, I'm trying to think, I'm gonna try to not overthink my answer here. For context, I've identified it as a weak spot in my BP. Hard time mentally framing the change between the two. Are you having more of an issue with exiting out of the L or exiting out of the B? Guessing the B. Yeah, and Shaq, I can definitely do that as well, because if it's the B, I mean, that's essentially the same. An interesting thing that that you've kind of just brought to my attention, David, is an interesting thing that would sort of get me thinking is going from a B to an L. That difference, the difference that makes in the entry stroke of the L, I find is an interesting one. Since at least the way I do my my ascender strokes, I've mentioned this on stream before, but I do my ascender strokes 2 different ways usually. The first way is the way that I would like this to be the one and only way. I do the ascender strokes, and that's with push-pull movement, like so. Not utilizing, well, those were not very consistent. Not utilizing hinge movement really. But if I'm writing something and I'm needing it to be extremely, or I want it to be precise, and I don't have time to mess around, then I do rotate my page. Not a ton, but I'll rotate my paper and utilize hinge movement. Because it is much, much, much easier to have essentially perfect consistency with hinge movement. But to me, it feels like cheating is not the right word, because it's not cheating. Like I said, I do it, but I like the idea of being able to write without rotating my paper all of the time. Yeah, I mean, Hinge, for anybody, Hinge is always going to be more consistent, because it's just, that's a movement that our arm can make repeatedly, and it's not as foreign of a movement as a push-pull movement. I know a lot of penmen back in the day would do, I don't like to overthink this, but I'm pretty sure a lot of penmen would use a lot more finger than I think my goal is to not use a lot of finger. There is a little bit in there, but I know a lot of penmen not slow down, but the finger comes into the play at the top of the ascender, which I'm personally not a huge fan of, because I like the fluidity and flow of a hinge movement ascender, but without utilizing hinge movement, because it is possible with push-pull movement. There's one right there. It's just not as consistent for me. It's relatively consistent, but and if I practiced it more, it would be more consistent. But it's not quite where I need it to be. I can't say that it was like a huge revelation or discovery of my own. I'm assuming it's something that I've seen talked about before. It's been discussed like on the Discord, and I've discussed it with people before, because I know there are some penmen who do most things with hinge movement, or they'll turn the page, or there's also penmen who you could technically, I know my camera's not set up for it, but I could technically turn my paper, let's say like this is my writing angle that I'm at today, where it's good for my capital letters and whatnot. But I could sort of find that, like, if I turn it this far, then I'm doing like beautiful, super consistent, like they're not even hard. They're just, it's so easy to get them consistent with hinge movement. But the issue with hinge movement is I lose my ability to go across a page. So it's really weird writing, like my straight line would be this way, which is hitting the limited movement that I have in my forearm. So it's not practical for doing writing, like even writing of a word. I could do segmented each letter and move my paper and move my hand and whatnot, but I don't like breaking up my penmanship nearly that much. So there's a happy medium that can be found. Like if, let's see, just looking at the camera to see that I get, if we go like a little bit, like so, we can utilize then, it's a little bit more hinge movement than my push-pull, but less than if I was using full hinge movement. So it is more consistent and it is cleaner, but it doesn't impact quite as much my ability to go across a page. It still does. I have a limited writing zone, so that's why I personally really like writing. I prefer to do my ascenders with push-pull movement so that I can write across the page and I can do my capital shades and whatnot like that without most things being affected. Another interesting, sorry, I haven't read I gotta catch up in the chat here in a second, but I'm on a little bit of just gonna spew this out real quick. Another interesting thing that I've sort of thought about in that is elbow placement. I feel like is a huge thing. I'm wondering, I don't know if this would be as impactful in something like business penmanship, like it would be in ornamental penmanship, because one huge thing that this does change. Like, yeah, my ascenders are easier or harder, but if I had my paper so I can do a perfect ascender, if I tried to do a capital stem at this angle, no way. My nib is not going to enjoy doing it, and the movement's going to be really strange, versus if I did it at this angle. And that being said, you can find that like happy medium where you can still do it, but personally, I have my paper set up so that my capitals are as good as they can be, or are at their sort of best possible outcome, and then the goal is to train my arm to do everything else at this angle. And then if I need to do a piece that has to be super precise, I can break it down and turn the paper in and do all that. Technically, you turn the paper for every single stroke, but that's too much work. I don't want to do that. Let me catch up in the chat, and then we'll go back to the original question, which is coming out of the B. I mean, comes down hinge music versus ball and socket. It's just it comes down to the way our bodies work. Like, this type of a movement is not nearly as easy to control as this type of a movement. There's way more moving parts. This elbow has to move, it has to bend and straighten. My shoulder is moving, but the shoulder can go all angles, so there's just a lot of things to control when I'm doing this. It's not a natural when I'm going up that way. It's not as natural just inherently in humans. It's something that's why we do push-pull drills and whatnot to get that into our system. But hinge movement, this is a 100% natural movement for any human being. That's just one moving part. And then there's just like a little bit of nuance to get the space in there to get the little oval. But this is just natural. Every human can do this. Like even when we do our ovals and whatnot, like if we're at, say, approximately, I don't know, we're not measured, but if we're at approximately like a 52-degree slant line oval, if we were to do that like way more angled, I'll leave my paper where it is, and to do that at like this angle, this is now an oval of a similar size done with, this is hinge, this is using the push-pull movement, this is not lateral, this is going away from us, basically directly away from the body. But if we do hinge movement ovals, so much easier. It's, I believe, a big reason why we often see in ornamental penmanship specifically, entry ovals. We have our horizontal entry oval into like a stem stroke like that. It's very common to see those droop, because it is natural to do. That's doing that oval with hinge movement rather than doing a pure horizontal oval. Because horizontal, if your paper is angled so it's at like a 52 degrees ish, or if I'm at this angle, to do a pure horizontal oval is hinge movement with some push. It's like a hybrid movement. It's not just hinge. But if I do this angle, I'm just utilizing hinge movement. Versus if I go my 52-degree slant line oval, again, that's that like hybrid movement. So every person could make the choice, if we wanted to do ovals using hinge movement. If we wanted to be a penman who purely used hinge movement, then we just write at this angle, and our ovals can look like this, but utilize hinge movement, because that's naturally way more with the way our body is naturally built than a standard oval. Fascinating. I don't know if it's the dancer in me that feels what's natural and what's not natural and has thought about that lots, but yeah. Anyways, so what got me into talking about the using hinge movement for that is, when we don't use hinge movement, like this is a very, very much a trained movement. It's something that we train to do over and over and over again consistently. Whereas when we're coming out of, and this is like you said earlier, you wrote the word bloom. Yeah, if we were to write the B, and now if I'm coming out of that B, I'm not on the baseline. So ideally, I want from my X height up and above, I want to look the exact same. But when I start down here before I go up, my undercurve going into the ascender stroke is going to be different when I start from here. So it affects, like you'll see what I think most people would probably do, and I include myself in this. Naturally, what would happen, let's see, if we get uber compare-y, talking through this, so these aren't going to be exact, but if we had our ascender stroke for the B, and then what I would assume most people would end up doing is they would essentially create this exact same shape, but starting here. But then the issue is, because it's a trained movement, it's going to risk going taller than the B, so we end up having to shorten it, which creates a different movement. So it leads me to think that we have to train starting the ascender stroke from both the baseline and starting from the X height. Well, you can see what I just did there. I started here, but I ended up aiming for that spot there, as if this was my baseline and I was going to an X height, rather than closing my loop directly on the X height. So that's yeah, because I mean, they're all, when we're doing something like business penmanship, ornamental penmanship, anything that is movement and muscle training based, I can tell you I've never practiced doing them two different ways. I don't know that I've ever analyzed them enough to notice that they are slightly different. Yeah, the loop would be, because yeah, if we're coming out of the B, so we'd finish the B like so. Going from here, I'm not going right from the X height, because technically we come slightly down and up, but we need to find that, I guess, the feeling of that stroke, if we're being super analyze-y, so that it cuts up almost sooner than we would if we were, than this stroke feels like, because it takes up so much horizontal space. But if we take that same amount of horizontal space, we're always going to have too much space between our B's and our next ascender stroke. So we have to train ourselves to pull that back. Whoa, my nib dug in. And so that when we come down for our L or whatever ascender stroke is after that, we have, yeah, basically everything in a perfect world. Come on, nib. Talking too much. All my ink is drying on the tip of my nib. In a perfect world, we want those two. I do them with hinge movement. For a sec. We want these two. Come on. Okay. My nib hates me all of a sudden. But we want those loops to be the same. So the focus on visual is the loops, and then we have to train our arm to know the difference when we go into those two. Which is interesting. Now I actually have a question for David and for everybody else in the chat. Whether it be business penmanship or ornamental penmanship, either of those, coming out of the B, do you do a lift? Do you do a little loop? Or do you just stop and then continue? I genuinely don't believe there is a right or wrong in this instance. But I'll do a large example. I know some people would do something like so, well, they'll just do, I'll use a V for example. because it's easier than doing the ascender for the B. But as we get to the top point here, just dropping down and up, I know there are other people who would do, they would lift and then drop a little bit lower and go out. There are people who would go straight from the top. I know some people do a little loop. So it's a very fine loop. It's almost like tracing back. They look almost indistinguishable, the tracing back and looping back, so long as it's not a big loop. It's never a big loop in ornamental penmanship or business penmanship, but I'm curious what do you think? Whether it creates the exact, I mean, these three in particular all kind of look the same, but it's sort of what you think about when you do it. And I think there are many ways that you can think about things, but that's one of the things that fascinates me about penmanship in general, is how, like, the way I think about something might be different than you, but we might come out with the exact same look. The baseline and the center loop, if I can help it. Oh, so you're saying on your ascender loops you like to go, and that's a business penmanship thing. In business penmanship, I definitely fall on that side of the fence as well. In ornamental penmanship, I always stop at the baseline for an ascender stroke, or sorry, stop at the X-height for an ascender stroke, except sometimes I'll continue all the way down for a lowercase f if I'm feeling risky. But for business penmanship, I'm much more a fan of going all the way through, personally, because to me, business penmanship is designed for business writing and to be written quickly and smoothly and with fluidity. That being said, I'm not the greatest business penman, but I feel like there are groups that fall on two sides of the do it like OP or do it like BP fence. Yeah, I imagine, like, if you're going relatively quickly, it's gotta be super easy to miss that exact spot. Isn't it supposed to look like an upside down teardrop? Are you talking about the top of the V, or is this what you're referring to right here, Marilyn? Personally, I don't put any space in that little, it would never be big enough to be a teardrop when the way I write it. Microscopically, maybe, but even like this was the looped variation. The loop is not looping nearly big enough. Like, in order to get to have a loop that was an upside down teardrop, I would have to have quite a large loop there. To me, like, this isn't that big, but to me that is a huge loop. And I would never have an actual loop there for ornamental penmanship or business penmanship. Yeah, going back to what I just read, your comment from earlier, David, about turning the paper, interrupting the writing process, and I couldn't agree with that more. Like, if I'm doing a specimen that I need to be perfect, I will turn the paper until the day comes that I can get it perfect without needing to turn the paper. That's obviously the goal, but I feel the same way about lifts. If I don't have to lift, I don't want to lift, because I want the flow of the writing. I know there are even penmen back in the day, like you can see many examples in Lupfer's writing, where they would do like lifts at the, to me it seems, it seems wrong. It just feels like I'm breaking, there's not rules, but say I was doing like this, even just this lowercase v, doing a, and then coming here and going there. Like Lupfer did that. They would, on like the lowercase e, they would lift and then continue on like a lowercase n. Whoops. Wow, that was one heck of a snap. Whoops. But they would lift at the baseline on a curved stroke, which makes no sense to me. I personally believe they did that, and I could be wrong about this, but my assumption is they did that when a piece was going to an engraver, or was going to be photo engraved to be printed, because they were working for optimum precision, so they were breaking things or breaking it all down. But when a specimen was written to be seen as written, it just seems like even the most precise nib drops just look bad in my opinion. Oh, that changed the shape of this a little bit. Oopsies. Being a little heavy-handed in my chatting today. Like, I totally get if there's a stroke that gives you a lot of trouble. Like, it's no secret that ascender strokes have been my like Achilles heel in lowercase letters forever. Hey Jagruti, welcome. What up, Jan? Nice to see you. Ascenders give me like a really hard time basically all the time. So I will sometimes cheat them. Do I like cheating them? No. Do I want to cheat them? No. Because I've written beautiful, basically what I would consider almost perfect ascender strokes without using hinge movement. So if I don't have to turn the paper, I don't want to turn the paper. I'd rather train that necessity out of me. That being said, that's a lot of work, and I totally get why people wouldn't want to do that. Yep, it's very true. And I think that's that's sort of the decision you make when you're doing a word or a specimen or a sample of writing. What is the goal? If you want to do something that ends up looking perfect to be used for teaching or for reference or to make yourself look good or something like that, then obviously I think lifting is the way to go. I would be lying if I said like certain pieces. Where is it here? Oh, did I move it? Like one of my favorite pieces. It's no secret that it's a favorite piece of mine. I don't know where it is. I've been organizing my desk area this week because it was chaos when I got home from my epic. But the Every piece by Lupfer. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful piece. It's one of my favorite pieces ever. And I was so disappointed when I looked at the original, because I have the print block of it and I've seen the print of it in the Business Educator, and it looks immaculate. But then when I saw the original, and I don't know if this is like the original or if it's, I'm assuming he did it multiple times, but the one that's in the iEmpathy scrapbook is very, very exactly what was printed. And there are lifts in certain places that, to me, when I see it, if I had never seen the perfect ones, I would look at it, and because I've seen Lupfer's work look good, originals of his work look good without lifts in those weird spots, the fact that that piece had lifts in weird spots was a huge letdown to me. It was like, not hating on him, but when I see those lifts, I don't know, it just takes away the work so much for me. Only because I know, and I've seen many of his work. Well, not so much even meeting your hero moment, because I've seen a lot of his work that doesn't have those lifts and looks no better or worse than that piece. So I just think it was, when he created that piece was being created to be scanned and to be submitted, or to be photo engraved. So he created it with a different mindset than if he was creating an immaculate original that somebody was going to study. I think if he was creating an immaculate original, it would look like, because he's capable, it would look like all the originals, the other originals that we've seen of his that aren't lifted at the bottom there, or if they are lifted, they have the pen drops much more accurately placed. So it gets into like the mindset, because I wasn't disappointed in him. It was just when you see one of your favorite pieces, and then you see these lifts in weird spots. Like some of the lifts, I totally get. Some lifts, I believe in lifting like all the time on certain parts. As an example, one spot where you don't have to lift, but if he were to lift, say he was just creating like a lowercase n, if he was just doing that first overturn, oh, I messed up my nib with that nib snap. But that overturn and downstroke, gosh, now I'm not getting ink at all. On that downstroke, lifting at the baseline, because that's a hard stop. That totally makes sense to me. Totally makes sense. Lift, drop down, you can perfectly hide the nib drop and it's good. But coming out of like a little shade on a micro curve, why lift there? It looks so much better with movement. And I don't know if you and I have specifically discussed this as either, but in the world of Engrosser script, and this is just my opinion, and I'm not obviously hating on anybody who does, because obviously you have to lift on all the things. The visible lifts in Engrosser script kill me. I am 0% a fan. I wish there was never any visible lift in the baseline, or on the baseline of Engrosser script. No thanks, don't want to see it. It ruins it for me. I don't know if this is just a me thing, but it completely ruins the writing for me. Not completely, I can still respect it. It's just, I'm not a fan. Because we do that, and I mean, I've heard people say, like, we lift there because you get the idea of, like, the hairline tapering to nothing, and then it's continuing from nothing, which totally works if you're using rapid movement and rapid touching as you're moving on the fly. So your hairline is actually tapering to a microscopic point at that bottom part. And if that's where there's no, like, if you have a really extra fine hairline that disappears at that bottom part, I wouldn't be bothered. But my issue is 99% of us who do Engrosser script in today's world don't use nibs that are crazy fine. Like if you sharpened one, like if I were to do it with this nib, I would likely get an outcome that I like more than I would if I'd had any other nib than this one. Because it's super sharp, so my hairline is finer there. But when you're doing slow hairlines, then it's just a thick line that's stopping and stopping. And people say it makes it look like the hairline disappeared, but no, all my head sees, and this is a product of overstudying and just being in this world, it totally ruins the flow for me. Hello, Mom. Looks technical. Not technical, we're just chatting. I just talk a lot. Could you write out how the weird spot looked? Sorry, oh, hi, Fozzie, by the way. Sorry, I was in the middle of a tangent when you came in here. Nice to see you. I don't remember what I was talking about with the weird spot. Do you mean at the bottom of Engrosser script? Or in the bottom of, I can show you with it, like in the bottom of Ornamental Penmanship when I would see it. the reducing of the ink drag makes sense. And like I'm aware that those strokes require a lift. But when you're lifting, if you're getting to a hairline and then you're going back, dropping the pen on a hairline, you're not gonna be pulling fibers because it's just a hairline. There's not enough ink in a hairline. If you're pulling out of the shade, then 100%. Or if you didn't do a lift and you just continued through from Engrosser script, especially when you're going slow, if you're writing and you continue through, fully a chance of pulling fibers. And that's why I feel like those lifts and that time control and manipulation is super important. Specifically what I'm talking about, I guess right now, with, well, the same turn in Engrosser script and in Ornamental Penmanship that I'm referring to. Like, I'll do them slow here, but for like Ornamental Penmanship, for Fozzie, what I was saying, what Lupfer would do on certain letters, like say a lowercase n, there would be a lift right there, and then the undercurve, where like this looks fine. I could zoom in a little bit more, I guess. Oh, bye, Carlo. See you later. Have fun at the gym. So like that lift spot right there, personally, not a fan of. And then same idea with Engrosser script. When the apologize in advance for this shade. It probably won't look very good. But if I'm coming down and I have that lift there, when I'm continuing that, let's get closer actually, just a little bit for now. I'll zoom it out again in a little bit. But for this one, like if I touch here, I'm not gonna pull any more fibers than if I touch like this is what I see a lot of, and it kills me. Again, I'm not disrespecting anybody who does a spot at the bottom, because I get that it's a thing that is done. It's just a complete personal preference for me that I want those to be touching. I like hairlines that touch, unless they're fully tapering to like nothing, which I can't do a hairline that tapers to nothing. Yeah, it's mainly just the accurate of the pen placement, but I feel like a space that's that big, I don't think it's specifically like, well, we could call it like accuracy. I love that Brian just came in here right now, because of all the, I'm gonna put you on blast real quick, Brian, of all the ornamental penmen on the internet, and I'm gonna say this, but you're one of the best, so whatever, I don't mind. You do this more than anybody these days. It kills me. I think to a degree, I agree with like laziness or whatnot, but I also believe, to that point, David, I think this is a look that is like, I personally see it as wrong. I know it's not wrong because it's in books and it's a normal thing, but I think the look of Engrosser script with this space here is now standard. I think it's just how people write it, and it's how people visualize it. So I think less of like laziness and misplacement, more of this is what people are trying to execute. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I've had numerous people have explained to me like why they would want the space in the bottom and things like that. I know also there's people could talk about how like engraving on the copper plates, and that's why there was a space there, because it was the two lines that were lifting. So because of the engraving process, there was a space or whatnot. But I do feel like it's become normal for people to see that, and that's what they strive for, rather than the complete touch. I think if somebody wants to do the complete touch and it's not a complete touch, then yes, it comes down to laziness and accuracy and whatnot. But, and again, all this sounds like I'm super being mean and not at saying that I hate when people do this. No, I don't hate when people do this. It's just personally, when I see Engrosser script that is this and not this, it's, to my eye, it's so much better to me. And it's what I like to see. It's my own personal opinion, and I don't hate on anybody who doesn't do it. It's just what I like to see better. Yes, I think the hairline fade to nothing is a real thing. I just believe if you want to get that effect, you better not be using like something that's not crazy extra fine, because if your hairline isn't actually fading to nothing, the illusion is just, it doesn't work. Personally. I feel like I'm insulting unintentionally a lot of people in a lot of people's scripts tonight, and I apologize. I don't want to insult anybody's scripts. I don't judge anybody's scripts. I love everybody's writing. It's just my personal preference when I see it. And I'm not saying that I can do better or anything like that. It's just what I like seeing. Like, I hate on Lupfer and them when they do it. So it's any modern penman should not be insulted if I'm saying that I dislike it. Because I criticize Moderaz's work. I criticize all their work because they would. Why wouldn't I? I'm glad. And that makes sense, Brian, going the stroke by stroke method. Something that I feel like, Brian, you do, because I think of any like North American penman, I feel like your writing looks, and I don't know how you do it, because it's not because of the lifts, but your writing looks more vintage than basically anybody's, which is infuriating to me because I can't figure out how. Please take that as a huge compliment. I don't know how your writing looks. No matter what you write, it looks like it came out of an old scrapbook, which is dope. But then I see the lifts that you put in, where you put them in, and it changes how I feel about that specific piece of writing. You put lifts in really interesting places, which that's fine. Yeah. But even just like lowercase letter, just like spacing letter structure, it has that something that I personally believe is missing in my own writing, and I don't know how to fix it because I genuinely don't see it. I need somebody to tell me what's wrong, basically. Yes. Well, and again, it's not like the ballpoint or whatnot. It's just it's the foundation underneath your writing, regardless of what you're writing with, what ink, what paper, what writing tool. There's a look that is there that is really impressive. But what I find really interesting about Brian's writing is, and I don't know if it's because you do it with a ballpoint so much that the lifts with a ballpoint, because I know lately, like, you've been doing a lot of writing and you've been like writing in shades and whatnot because you're writing with a ballpoint or just a fine nib. So you write both sides of the shade, you do the outline of the shade. But there are certain places where you lift that make me just think, like, why? It's so much easier if you just don't lift there and keep going. It's how I personally feel. It cracks me up every time. Carlos said I'm lying. What did you say? Well, I'm not lying. What am I lying about? About not judging people's writing? I don't judge people's writing. And Fozzie, you can most definitely say, David, may you do it. Call him out. I don't hate the gaps. prefer no gaps. Mind the gap. Remove the gap. Oh, I just realized I didn't make tea for today's stream. I'm tealess right now. That's crazy. Yes, David, I agree 100%. I feel like I can look at writing and sort of see where or why people lifted. But my personal goal would be to just train to not have to. Obviously, I mean, I lift a lot when I do ornamental penmanship, but it's only in, I guess my rule of thumb is I only lift on a hard stop most of the time. Never on a curve. Because you can't hide a lift on a curve. It's impossible. Even the best ones. There's old specimens, like going back to, we were talking about ascenders earlier. There's specimens, like all the old books teach the ascender stroke, stopping on the X height, coming down, and then flowing through. That's easy when there's a shade there, but there are samples of old work that are all hairline, that are ornamental penmanship, they're no shade, where, like, you can clearly see that I lifted there. That's an easy place to hide a lift. But there are some old pieces that you can look at with a crazy microscope, and I swear they didn't lift, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, David, about you taking your ascenders in BP all the way to the baseline sometimes. And I wondered if they did that because, or they were that good at hiding. Like if you stopped right at that exact spot and then kept going in a hairline, you can hide it really, really well. I think that is one thing that the penmen of old were masters of hiding their lifts, which is incredible. But also I don't know that they lifted everywhere they said they lifted. Like bringing up, we could say, like Dell did that article about Mataraz's writing. Was it Mataraz? Brownfield. Can't remember. I was Brownfield talking about Mataraz's writing, maybe? But in that article, he like super breaks down where the lifts all would be and stuff like that. And I genuinely don't think I agree with all of that. Because I've seen so many instances of so many forms and letters and whatnot that the same penman wouldn't do the same thing every time. I think it depends on where the letter falls on the page, where the letter falls in the word, where their hand happens to be, where they are in their movement of that word, where or when they lift. It was super, like, a pliable thing, I think. Thank you very much, Brian. I wish I need to practice more is what I need to do. I'm very happy with my writing these days, though. I just could be happier. Yeah, I think they were very, very good at hiding. That article genuinely, I mean, I've talked about overanalyzing things on this stream and in general a lot. I'm definitely the dancer penman who just likes to grab a pen and wing it and not overanalyze things that much. I know that doesn't seem like the case today because all we've done is super analyze little specific things, but I'm definitely that. And that article, it lit a fire in me. They were just like, no, I disagree with most of this stuff. Not that the stuff in there is wrong. I think everything in there is correct in that instance, but when it's written in a way that's like, not dogmatic is the wrong word, but is like the right or wrong. Fozzie, it was a series of lessons, or a series of articles, I guess, that Del Tisdale wrote. They're on IAMPIT's website, I believe. If memory serves, it was analyzing Brownfield, or it was Brownfield's notes analyzing Monteraz, or it was analyzing Brownfield, who was Monteraz's last student, something like that. I think Monteraz was a master in lift hiding. I think one of the things that Monteraz was best at was stopping a lot, but in a way that nobody would ever know. And I think there's a reason, just because we're talking about Monteraz, and like if we're talking about ascenders and whatnot, if my paper is at this angle, which I would use to write like a 52-degree slant line approximately, I think there's a reason that Monteraz wrote more angled, because he wrote at like, not always the exact same, but he wrote more angled. And if I have my paper at this exact angle, but I write more angled, guess what I get to do? Ba 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 ba. Yep, I get to use hinge movement. And I think that is one of sort of Monteraz's like secrets. I think that's one of the things that or one of the main reasons he wrote more angled, is because he utilized hinge movements to give him accuracy, and also it's easier to hide things when you're using that type of movement. Penmanship just feels more comfortable with hinge movement. It just doesn't work at the 52-degree slant line nearly as well. Who did the analysis? I believe, Dell, I think, did the analysis in the article. And I wish I was one of those business penmanship writers who would write like a full word without stopping. Whoops. I am not. I like lifting quite often, but my lifts would always be like bottom here, top of the eye, bottom of that one, bottom of that one, top of the U's. Wouldn't really lift on the top of the U's, but anywhere there's a hard point. Never on a curve. Never on a curve. Yeah, I agree. I guess I default to, I lift where it feels like should happen. It's similar to the conversation where people talk about forearm movement, pure movement writing, like pure forearm movement writing, or combination movement writing with the fingers and the wrists and the hands. I actually had a really good conversation with Marcus about this at convention a couple weeks ago. He was watching me write, and we got talking about combination movement. And I endeavor to write without using my fingers at all. My goal every time I sit down is to not use my fingers. But because we are human, and I understand the script and it's the flow of how things work, when my fingers and my wrist do things. I can't say they don't help or they don't write. They definitely do write, but it's never a conscious choice. My fingers and hand just like help out. When I teach, if I was teaching movement writing, or if I was going to teach like a business penmanship or something like that, I would teach to not use the fingers or the wrist at all. I would teach to have this whole hand encased in concrete so nothing moves. And everything is just nice and solid. And then when the penman gets used to that, naturally, because it's human nature, we can't actually not move things. Those muscles will start lending a hand where it makes sense. But if I tell somebody from the beginning to lend a hand where it makes sense, then they will just usually default to utilizing the fingers or the hand too much, or more than would be ideal, and they'll never break the habit of not using movement. Habit of not using yeah, Make sure I'm saying the right thing, what I'm meaning. Yeah, that's how most people, Fozzie, in ornamental penmanship for the ascender stroke, most teaching of it say to stop at the cross point or at the X height. I don't think you have to. No fingers, me and Marcus. Well, straight up, but it was interesting because Marcus is, I think, of the same mind frame as me. Is the fingers will do a thing. They will join in, but not consciously. Like, they come in when it's required because it helps the flow. But the goal, like your muscles and your brain should always be doing no fingers. And then when the fingers come in, they're just going to be adding and not taking away from. In my ornamental penmanship, I admittedly use fingers a little more sometimes than I would like. Habit I'm trying to break. Biggest habit I used to be trying to break, but I've kind of just given up because it's not going away. I do drop my wrist. The heel of my hand right here. There's never any weight on it, but the heel of my hand does touch the paper. Pretty much always. Unless I think about it and fix it, but remember I told somebody that and I was trying to fix it and they said, well, if it doesn't affect the writing, who cares? That kind of made me think, good point. Doesn't take away from my writing, so who cares? But in a perfect world, it'd be nice if it wasn't there. Yep, I think there is something to be said for just answering what you're talking about, ma'am, and about writing bigger. I think writing bigger is a great teaching tool. Can be a great teaching tool. Because it requires control. It's easier to see lack of fluidity, and it's easier, you can't use what Adam Savage says. One of my favorite sayings of his is to hide crimes. And you can't hide your crimes nearly as easily as you can with when you're writing small. When you write tiny, I'm assuming this is why, like, for example, the IAMPIT certificate program, the original, the first year, one of the required sizes was very small. Like super, super tiny. But I would guess that the judge at that point it's really hard to judge things that are that small because you can hide mistakes and stuff when you're writing super small. So they made it bigger, which makes sense. What is happening with these nib snaps today? They're crazy. This nib hates me. Yeah, right? Full on. Is it 4th of July? So many nib snaps. Fozzie, I feel like you've been going through so many like old articles and old, like, I'm assuming most of those things you're posting on social media are coming from the Business Educator. But that's great. All your underlines and quotes and things like that coming from the BE. Okay, Nib, stop being ridiculous. Yo, pull up the article. That article makes me unhappy. If I'm being completely honest. It bugs me. Because it's what he's talking about makes sense. And like the points he makes make sense. It's just taught in such a like, I don't want to say strict, but in such a like strict way that like right and wrong and how it was done. And none of us can say how any of them did anything because it's impossible to tell. None of us are good enough to actually make those assessments. We can make some pretty good educated guesses, but I can't say Mataraz did it like this. Absolutely not, I can't say that. Especially when it's something that you can clearly see in, for this example, Mataraz's writing, 2 words. He didn't write the lowercase e the same every time. He didn't write the ascender strokes the same every time. You can see it in the writing. He wrote them the way they needed to be written in that instance, which is how all of us write. Perspective is honestly one of my favorite words in general when it comes to anything. I have to love the word perspective because I'm too damn opinionated about most things. Then don't read it, Brian. You're not missing out. One day you can read it. There is one thing. Is it in that article? Or I think it's in Zahner's. It's in Zahner's Lessons in Ornamental Penmanship by C.P. Zahner. I don't remember which volume talks about it. But I've had, like, penmen have talked about it in the Discord before. And there's that one thing about resting the pinky, like this end of the pinky, but using the pinky similar to how we use the forearm. Like the pinky, can't really demonstrate it because my hand's in the way, but using the pinky so it's rested and our hand is like bending around it like that. So it's rested but not like moving. And there's one thing and it drives me nuts because I've tried a whole bunch to sort of figure out what they mean, and I'm pretty sure I understand what they mean because a bunch of us have discussed it like on the Discord and we've got into it a bunch of times. I know Mohamed was talking about it a bunch a while ago, but it drives me bananas because it feels so strange to me. If my pinky isn't gliding all the time, like I would rather it never ever had any friction or stopped at all. I don't want anything in my hand. Any like stopping of the pinky just feels so weird. Nah, even for most of my writing it's like sub 1 millimeter, and it just feels crazy to me when that stops. Like I like to rest on the side of my nail specifically just to even help like the flow and fluidity. The finger is down, it's sort of touching, but never does it grip enough where the finger actually stops and I'm flexing around it. That just feels so weird. But I know there are penmen who love that technique and like super super passionate about saying it should be used and things like that. I think a lot of them, Brian, I've said so many times, I mean all of us will say like we learn so much from like a 10-second video of one of these guys writing to sing their hand. But in general, I feel like a lot of them got so into making their books sound good and be well worded that they're so bloody hard to understand. And I think they added things. And I know, like, dancers, I know do this. I know there's styles back in the day, like, I can specifically, like, locking from the 70s. The way that the lockers created a lot of the moves, they were very casual and very chill. They weren't, like, rules. But then as they got older, they started teaching rules. And then I would be taught, you have to do things this way, and you have to do things this way. But when you hear stories from the ones who made it up about how they made it up, it's like, well, no. You're teaching me that I have to do it this way, but you didn't do any of those things. That's not how you dance. And I genuinely feel that about like Zahner, for basically all of them. I think to a degree they wrote the way they taught, but I don't think they wrote. I just genuinely don't believe they did all of the things they said they did in their books. I think their books are just overwritten pretty much. And also, as a teacher, and I know people do this as well in the dance world, I've learned from people who they'll teach me something and you do it good. The teacher, because sometimes they're jerks, will make it harder. They'll explain it and make it overcomplicated just to make it seem like what they did was harder or more complicated. They're like, oh, like you're getting good at it. No, you're doing this wrong, this has to be. They'll just make it more specific to make it harder because they don't want you to be as good as you are, which seems really weird because that's not what a teacher's supposed to do, but it happens in everything, unfortunately. Well, this is like Late Night Live number 116. Mike gives opinions on everything. We're just going today. Glide forward and plant the pinky. Finger, yeah. It just feels it just feels wrong. Like it feels icky on my finger when I stop my finger. I'm not saying don't do it. If it works for you, Zaner said to do it, so do it. But it feels so strange. Well, yeah, and it's possible. It might be one of those things where, like, maybe without thinking about it, sometimes when I'm writing small letters, my pinky is actually chilling. But if I think about it, nah, it feels strange. That's one of those things where if my finger ever stops when I'm doing like really small letters and uses, like I guess there a little bit, I'm stretching my finger, or I'm using pinky movement or pinky pivot. Article name. Just on IAMP's website, just look up Del Tisdale and you should be able to find it. DELTYSDALE. And you should be able to find something. It's just Lessons in Ornamental Penmanship by Del Tisdale or something like that. There's a few of them. Yeah, there's a few links to different ones. Yeah, there we go. By Zaner. Oh, for sure. Without question, David. I think that is absolutely correct. Yeah. Do you think would they try to exhaust topics specifically so people would then come to their classes or come to their schools? Or was the intention to just go... Or was the intention actually just to give more information than the next guy? Since basically all of them had train-at-home lessons. I wonder if a lot of that was just to sort of set people apart. This nib hates me. Come on. I feel like I've done very little writing. The past hour I've just been talking. Yeah, that's very true. Okay. I need to fix this nib real quick so I can actually write. Yeah, I think a lot of it might have been almost like sales gimmicky as well, potentially. Because they were all, let's be honest, they were all teaching the same thing. They did have slightly different sort of ways of breaking it down, but at the end of the day, it's all the same stuff. It's not that complicated, but the way different penmen would break it down, I guess, made it somewhat their own, so their course would stand out from other people's courses. Better out than in. Luckily, I mean, nothing I'm saying is like, these aren't secret opinions that I've been bottling up forever. I mean, it's no secret that I'm an opinionated individual with certain things. But the biggest dislike I have with certain methods of like teaching or some of the old books and stuff is that some of them were rather do this, not this. And I disagree with that, because I think there are many ways to do the same thing. Could've. Am I annoyed by No, I'm not actually legitimately annoyed by the articles. There are some good points in there, and it's good analysis. I will say, ooh, there's the bird. I can feel it. There's the issue. The little rough part. Sorry. I think, and I take pride in this. Not that I had anything to do with it, but I'm just proud of where the penmanship community is right now. I feel like those articles, the base general knowledge of the people who are doing and practicing and studying business penmanship, ornamental penmanship, and whatnot today in 2023, I think the capability we exceed the capability of when that article was written. So I feel like that article was explaining things that was up, and nothing against Dell, but his quality of writing as well he wasn't super precise ornamental penmanship. I think it was somebody who couldn't do the things, analyzing the things, and telling people who also couldn't do the things how the things had to be done. And to me, that just doesn't equate to a good scenario. I think Dell had, and it was good, he was one of the only ones at the time doing it, but I think Dell had a lot of theories about how things were done, and I think those theories were what he was putting into his own practice and things like that, but I don't think his skill level in practice had got to a point where he was actually utilizing those things. So I think it was more so purely analytical and less so practical, a little bit. Yes, 100%. Yep. Whatever gets the letter to work. It's one of the reasons, I was chatting with some left-handers at IAMPIT this year. Teaching left-handers to me is always it's like a puzzle. It's always fun and exciting because every left-hander, every right-hander is different, but every left-hander is really different. So it's fun because you get to figure out what works for that person, because it's not going to be the general best practice. In right-handed writers, we can give this is the general best sort of practice. If there's something that works better for you, or we'll figure out if there's another thing that feels better or works better or whatnot, then that may be the case. But in general, I feel like today's ethos of penmanship teachers and writers is in an incredible place where we're doing things that haven't been done in a lot of years. But yeah, left-handed people, they just require sometimes throw everything I know about penmanship out the window and go 100% back to how does this feel? How did we get what do we gotta do to get to this outcome? Building from nothing, which is great. When's next year's conference? Oh, where? Next year's conference is in Texas. Don't remember the city. Alright, is my nib gonna work now? I feel like I haven't written in hours. Just been talking. I have a theory for the lowercase h. I think they didn't lift on the lowercase h as much as we think they did. Like, you know how the lowercase h, or like ascenders, we lift on that x height? I kind of feel like in lowercase h, they went all the way to the baseline sometimes. I've seen a lot of vintage specimens, and yeah, some of them probably have hidden lifts, but sometimes I think they just took those all the way to the ground. Some of the hairlines are just too good. Making your eyes tick. Don't hurt yourself, Foxy. Yes, San Antonio is next year's. On the first week of July. First weekend of July. You have a US visa? Like a travel visa or a money visa? I'm assuming you mean you mean travel visa. Oh, sweet. Well, everybody should definitely come to convention in 2026. We don't know where it's gonna be, but it's gonna be dope. I hope. Oops. Oh, Brian, if you're still here, for August, and, well, any other ornamental penman who wasn't here in the beginning, in August, and maybe September, depending on how August goes, we're bringing back another series of Sig Slinging Sundays. We're gonna do Canon. We're gonna do a Canon series. So we're getting our round, difficult to control signatures going this month. I'm excited. Oh, yeah, I mean, Vancouver would be dope. I won't be doing my convention in Canada, though. As much as I would love to, it's just, at this stage in the game, I personally don't think it's the right choice. And I'm saying that as probably somebody who would want to have it in Western Canada more than anybody. I just don't think it makes sense. I am going to try to keep it on the west side of the country, but I'm exploring some options at the moment. Yeah, Canons are super hard. We're gonna see how it goes. I'm excited though. Super precise, rounded, not ovoid forms. It's gonna be interesting. In the next couple days, I'm gonna pick the first 4. But yeah, Sig Slingin' Sunday Canon edition. Sounds so good. Well, let's see. I guess I'm allowed to call it that. Unless I get kicked out, who knows? Maybe so long as I don't ruffle feathers too much and get kicked out of my position. Fingers crossed. How we switch to round back. What is this? There's a heart in the... There we go. How he switches to round back to oval, then... Oh, you're talking about Canon. Yeah, it's... He flourishes round. His letter forms are oval, and then he'll start a flourish oval, and then he'll do a round flourish. It's... Yeah. And also, I like his designs... I guess a fusion. Canon's designs feel like, I mean, they're not how I try to design signatures and stuff when I do the blotter signatures, but because I tend to design more rounded than ovoid, his signatures to me just look more designed, even though they were, I'm assuming, written that way. A lot of them we haven't seen originals of. Seen some originals, but a lot of them were probably done larger and shrunk down and whatnot, but we're gonna try to do them straight from the pen, round forms and all. Yeah, that little heart is new. I feel like that wasn't here last time I streamed. Was it this little heart? Oh, I just 100'd my own chat. Oops. Yeah, I don't know. Can you move it? Can I drag it some? Nope, it is just there. Oh well. I have to wait till somebody else talks. Was E.J. O'Sullivan Canon? Maybe. There's a few awesome E.J. O'Sullivan is one of the coolest sequences of capital letters to put into a signature. My IAMPA Secret Service. Guesswork. Guesswork, it's full of speculation, but then followed up with like right or wrong. It just feels weird. Yes, David, please do. Thank you very much for hanging out. It was good chatting. Hopefully, I don't know if we fully got into coming out of the B. We really only talked about coming out of the B into the L, not into other letters. I don't know if we actually got to the bottom of what you were hoping for, but have a good night. If we didn't, ask me again sometime or in a letter and we can continue that conversation, or bring it up on the Discord actually. Get everybody in talking about it. Sweet. Yeah, if anybody has any questions at all, I mean, I answer questions on my stream, obviously, but if you ask questions on the Discord, if they're specific, there's enough people in there that are good and love giving really good opinions, and just good conversations. Yeah, Creatrium. is he saying Maddie? A lot of, I mean, I think that was standard. Woo, that hairline was fine. Well, yeah, articles normally do follow the proper name. This is true. That's better. The finest little change makes a stroke go from something I highly dislike to something I like. Simple little change makes a huge difference. Living in worlds of millimeters, fractions of millimeters make differences. It's tough. Alright, note to self. Fozzie is anti-nickname. I think that's how a lot of penmen, not the penmen of old, but in that era of when Dale would have written that letter, I think Maddie is just how they referred to Moderoz. I believe. I could be wrong, as I was not around. Oh, come on. Foswald Glarewood? I like Foswald. That's a fun name. Was Moderoz a ladies' man? I don't know. I don't think so. But I don't know. He was married. I have a bad habit of making the exit oval of my M too low. Yeah. He was very, very opinionated in blowing it. But the one cool thing that article does point out is like, I think it's from that article where there's like certain people would write the lowercase c like so, or certain people would write the lowercase c like so. Actually, curious, chat, what side of the fence do you guys fall in? Undercurve and then the hook C stroke, or overcurve with a hook and then a downstroke on an exit stroke? Or, I guess there are multiple options. You could also just be somebody who goes all the way through without stopping. Me too, Fozzie. I think if I were to lift, I would do the entry stroke in a hook, and then the downstroke in a... But I usually, if I'm being completely honest, I don't stop. I do it all in one. Like so. Which looks the same, so why stop? That one feels weird to me. These are those instances where if it feels more comfortable for you to stop in a certain spot, then that's where you stop. Because you could technically do the lowercase e like an L, I guess, as well. Stop on the cross point. But that kind of feels unnecessary. A little bit. Working lately, one of the things I've been practicing is trying to get strokes like this, that point there, and then points on, say, the capital B, that point right there, starting the shade a little bit later, like a fraction. I mean, time-wise, it's a fraction of a second, basically, but allowing, like for the E, for example, do the first little curve, not starting that shade till we get there, and then shade it out as you're going through. Rather than, I tend to often shade as soon as I come around that top corner, which is too soon. Or not too soon, it just I feel like it would look better if it wasn't so fast or so soon. But it's such a minute timing change. And then I get that little kink where the weight goes in. Whoa. My desk over here is all just like speckled because my Inkster is going crazy today. There's little white speckles everywhere. I think it needs to be filled more. Oops. I will clean it up later. Not a big deal. Oh, wait, Brian, you say undercurve is easier? So doing undercurve and then doing the hook, you say that's easier? Because wait, correct me if I'm wrong, you also do your lowercase a. This is something that I would like to start doing, but that I do not do. With it like the undercurve or the entry stroke. And then lifting into the A rather than going all the way. It's something I want to start doing, but I do not do. Fountain pen ink, ugh, is the most stressful thing in the writing world, I think. Well, I guess, so technically the question for the C, it's less about the undercurve or overcurve going into the letter. It's more so, because you're always gonna, if you do an undercurve, you have to compound curve into the top of the C anyways. Wait, there's... The question is more so, where do you put the hook? This little hook here. If you're putting a hook on the end of the writing, do you put the hook on the second stroke, or is the hook part of your entry stroke? Be it undercurve or overcurve or compound curve or whatnot. Because, like, I feel like overcurves is how, if I did a standalone C, I would pretty much always write an overcurve. But when I'm connecting from a letter, even if it's like I have an A, there's a compound curve in the middle there. Ooh, what did Oja Sweeney get in the mail? Paper? An Umbercast and a Tom Studio Flex nib. Ooh, fancy Oja Sweeney. I actually started grinding very casually. I wasn't going to, but my my Chinese knockoff fountain vanishing point, knockoff pilot vanishing point, has a fine nib on it. So camera's out of focus, but I figured I was gonna try to grind the nib. It's been a while since I've ground a fountain pen nib. Takes a lot more precision than a dip nib. Normally I let professionals do it, but this is a cheap nib unit, so I figured I would give it a shot. Ooh, I have not used Tom Studio or Fountain Pen Revolution. Oh, do you have a local person that restores fountain pens, Fozzie? To go pick them up from? Interesting. That feels very strange to me. But a lot of people, I feel like, I don't think you're alone in that, right? I think a lot of people do it that way. Which letter C to be written? Oh, so for the Spencerian certificate, if you're going for the IAMPA certificate, you have to use, or you should use, I would highly recommend using the traditional C, which is no longer used, and it's kind of weird. But is that it is an undercurve, but it has a loop in it. I'll do a big one so you can see what it looks like. It has this, well, I didn't really do a very big one that I meant to. Come on, nib, give me ink. It's essentially like that. So it's an undercurve, and then it goes all the way out the top, and then has a little loop, and then around and up. If anybody is planning or trying for their IAPIS Spencerian certificate, the Theory of Spencerian Penmanship book is what they recommend, or what they are judging on. So basically, however the forms are in that book, as close as you can get them to that book, that's how they should be. I know at one point I added some shades to some of my letters that I probably shouldn't have, and I got dock marks for it, but not enough that I didn't pass still. But I would recommend, to be safe, do exactly what is in Theory of Spencerian Penmanship, which is the traditional C. It has the little loop, which can look really pretty. It's an interesting variation. Sometimes I like it. It can be mistaken for a lowercase e sometimes. Oh, new Spencerian or Theory of Spencerian Penmanship you say is complicated? It's, I guess if I'm being 100% honest, with that book, I did not really pay attention to the explanation of the letters. I just looked at what the letters looked like, and like the ratios, and the distances, and the lengths, and the spacing, and all that kind of stuff. Visually, I didn't use it as a teaching, or as a teaching guide. So I can't really speak to that. Been trying lately this idea of it's much more easy and noticeable in black ink because your hairlines are incredibly fine. White ink, it can be tough sometimes, but the idea of a super fine lowercase shade when doing ornamental penmanship, like often if we're writing, say, this size, like habitually I'll just sort of write a shade like that, which is, there's nothing wrong with that shade. If you go bigger than that, I feel like it can look too big, too heavy. But the idea of a shade that is basically just not a hairline, not a shade, but not a hairline, but still has the taper and everything of a shade. So you have an unshaded N, and then just like the littlest bit of weight on that downstroke can look so great. That was maybe a little bit too fine, but just the subtlety of it, I think, is so beautiful. You lent Theory of... Did you have a vintage copy, Fozzie? Or one of the new copies? Or one of the reprints? Who did you lend it to? What don't you like about the A? The lowercase a. Well, the capital A as well. The capitals are... That's an interesting one. I don't like the lowercase a in the Theory of Spencerian Penmanship, personally. Ah, you got it with the workbooks. Okay, got you. There's a good PDF of it somewhere on the internet. Yeah, that's the one that has this guy. Like so. The shades are so fine in that variation of Spencerian. They're just slightly shaded, like stem shades. Like that's even probably too thick for a stem shade. That's probably too thick for a stem shade. It can look really pretty. My biggest issue with the Spencerian examples in Theory of Spencerian Penmanship are the ratio. I personally don't like when the capital letter is 3 times the X height. I feel like it looks too small, personally. I think 4, 5, or 6. 4 is good. I think 5 is ideal. 6, you get into the ornamental world a little bit more. But I think 3 times the X height, unless you're doing something like shaded Spencerian, then that's different if you do Signwriter script. But I think for standard, hardly shaded Spencerian, like what's in Theory of Spencerian Penmanship, 3 times the X height is just so short. It makes the capitals look so small. Yeah, like that kind of a little accent shade on that S. Just that little bit of something. Just to give it just enough. Like on an ascender, you have no shade versus just like a little bit. It just gives you a little bit of weight. It draws the eye and looks, or sorry, doesn't draw the eye. It just adds a little bit of contrast. It's just delicate and wonderful. But doing it at speed to not lose the fluidity is the tough part. It's much easier when the shades get bigger like that, which also looks really nice. I'm just, with my lowercase letters lately, trying to do a less is more approach. Hello, Bodie. Wow, very long time no see. How you doing? Sounds good, Marilyn. Have a good night. We'll see you later. Sweet dreams. Lesson 2 of Theory of Spencerian Penmanship, Fozzie? Or of what? You've been doing a whole bunch of the business educator lessons. Haven't you? Did I miss something in the chat? Which stroke is on the slant and which isn't? What do you mean, which stroke is on the slant? Oh, just Swinny? Italy, fun. I want to go to Italy. If anybody's in Italy, I want to teach in Italy. Let's do a trip. I know that feeling. Holy. I haven't been lazy to grab my pen since getting home from my amphith. My desk has been madness. It's been busy. No, not anymore, Kala. We're just talking about traditional Spencerian now, for people who are potentially going to go for certificates. I could talk about lifting forever though. Today was a lot of talking in the stream. I'm almost talked out. I agree, Fozzie, you are. What is the explanation of A? I don't even know. Like I said, I never paid attention to the explanations of those letter forms very much from those books. I think at one point, Fozzie, that article had snippets of Mataraz's writing as well. So it was like Mataraz's writing and then his sort of pencil and breakdown of Mataraz's writing. I believe, maybe, I think at one point that was there, but I think, don't quote me on it, but I feel like that went missing. Yeah, most lesson books overcomplicate things. I'll just win. I'm glad, Skeet. Yeah, tonight was a good one. David and Brian got me talking today. Those hairlines on that lodge are beautiful. Getting nice hairlines with white is so hard. See, like, that's not nearly as good. Still good, but that's just more standard. That one is beautiful. Somehow, a fluke. Oh, and we have hairline got too fine. Inconsistent is no good. Woo! Clean lowercase letters today. Oh, just the first word. Okay, never mind. Because I think, I don't know if it's a piece or specifically what his whole analysis is on. You can find what he's talking about in something, but I don't remember what piece or what sample of Mataraz's writing he was referring to. Somebody would know. I just can't remember. See, I will talk about lifts one more time. Because I just noticed that I needed to turn, like I didn't stop on this E, but I was getting out of my range of movement, so I needed to stop on this E. But I would stop there on the E, whereas some people would stop at the baseline and then pick it up from there, rather than stop where you can easily hide it and then pick it up from there. Just interesting. Different methods. These too short. I agree, Bobby. I agree. 100%. I think I'm gonna take my bike out tomorrow for the first time this summer. I haven't been cycling yet in the sun, and I think I should do that tomorrow. I have to run an errand, so maybe I will take my bike on a bit of a trip. Biking in the city scares me. Do you guys want to see my cool bike helmet that I just bought? I'm gonna show you my bike helmet, because why not? I'll be right back. I'm gonna get it. Can I tell you how hard it was for me to decide to pick a bike helmet? I know it shouldn't matter, but it mattered. My bike. I'm proud of my first time owning a bike helmet since I was like a child. My bike helmet. Does it have ears? Well, I have ears. There. Now I'm safe. Now we can do aggressive penmanship because I'm safe. Ta-da! But I gotta take this little tag off. Where'd the tag go? Here. I have to remove that at some point. There. At this part of the stream, we're gonna do the X Games of penmanship, extreme penmanship. What would extreme penmanship look like? We have to like move like this while we're doing things. I dropped my headphones. The yellow thing is just a tag. It explains something called, it's like some kind of safety technology. It's literally just a paper tag that it's a brand new helmet. I haven't worn it yet. So I just have to take it off. Aggressive. Yeah. It's like aggressive rollerblading. Extreme penmanship. What is extreme? I cannot do extreme penmanship with this nib because it'll snap. But is it like when you gotta do, it has to be a whole arm movement. It's when the signatures are crazy, super flourishy. Crazy, crazy fast. Oh, maybe it's like a timed thing. This flourish, you can do it in this amount of time. Who can get it the best in the crazy, crazy fast, crazy, crazy. This is silly. Maybe I'll do that at my IAMPIC. One night I'll have a penmanship speed contest. What happened here? What's going on? Oh, right, my headphone went through the thing. Right. Alright, so long, bike helmet. I will take the tag off and maybe ride or wear you tomorrow when I go run an errand on my bicycle. I gotta fill up my tires and then run errands. Whoops. Not in frame there, sorry. Sorry. Ooh, it's a lovely pea. Whoa! What happened to the music? What happened? Weird. That song just had dead space in it. Strange. Or maybe extreme penmanship is like you're writing at a standing desk, but the desk is moving. So somebody's pulling the desk, so you have to keep writing while the desk is moving, and you have to keep up with the desk. That would be fun. Be a fun, silly challenge. Whoa. Alright, this weekend, we're moving into the world of Canon. I'm gonna have to fully shift the way I write. It's gonna be probably the hardest series of sig slingings we've done, I think, for me. Try to write in a movie. Yeah. You do a lap calligraphy or lap penmanship in a moving vehicle. Have I chosen them? No. They're pretty much, they're just gonna be like, they'll be from his green book, most of them, I think. I'll go through the educator and maybe pick some others, but they'll just be the standard, like the popular or famous Canon ones. I don't know if I think we've done a Canon something in the Sixlingen before. I gotta go back and see just to make sure I don't double or repeat one, because I know I forget what I do all the time. The one with the nice H. Post it in the Discord, Fozzie. Post it in OP chat as your suggestion. Oh, what? Brian, what do you mean don't wind up? I do more wind up than I do writing. This is like making a golfer not take a practice swing. Ah! It's so weird. Alright, we're gonna try some writing without a wind up. Oh, it just happens. Like I cannot do like a bunch of them, but going from like one stroke to the next one, it just happens. Jeez. Oops. This is probably the hardest challenge I've ever tried. You can wind up. This is not, I believe, this is not the first time Brian has told me to try to do this. Or if it wasn't Brian, somebody else told me to try to do this a while ago. Just to try to go from nothing. It takes so much effort for me to not wind up. I don't think it affects my form all that bad. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing out on things when I'm writing. It's just such a habit for me. Ooh, that was a really big... Ah! I guess I'm not going to include follow-throughs on exit strokes as wind-ups. I don't think. Because sometimes that's... Wow, see, there was a wind-up. That's... I can't do. So hard not to. And again, I don't think it's because it's mandatory. I feel like it's hard because I've just done it habitually for so long that I know I do it. I do it way more than I need to. I do a lot of wind-up. If I was a golfer, people would make fun of me. What comes after G? H. Right. Darn it. It's not a bad challenge because I know that I do it too much and I could afford to do it less. It's funny how just habitual it is though. After so many years. It's one of those, I feel like I'm an addict. I feel like I could totally do it without. I don't need to do it. What do you mean? No, I don't need to wind up. I can totally do it without a wind up. I'm not addicted to the wind up. It's not required. Darn it. Ugh. It just happens. I feel like I write a lot slower when I don't do a wind-up. See, that wasn't a wind-up. That was a follow-through. I'm saying follow-throughs are allowed. I'm giving myself permission to follow through. Oh, that's very round at the bottom. And I also did an A instead of a Q. Whoops. It's kind of incredible how much of a just habitual response that is. It honestly, was it David? Somebody told me, somebody in one of my late night lives, I don't remember which one, it was a while ago, straight up told me that I shouldn't, or that they read somewhere that you shouldn't do like repeated ovals as a wind-up. Which I don't really know the benefit of not doing them. I mean, I'm not mad at them, but it is tough. I'm just so trained to do it. Whoops. That was my hand. That was not the nib's fault. That was 100% my fault. That is a challenge. Because I remember years ago I had a conversation with somebody, even doing like say you do this in the air before you do a horizontal oval. I personally, like, I know some people will do this and go straight into the oval, whereas, and that's good, but I often, most of the time, would do this, then I stop, and then do the stroke. I think it was Marcus that I was talking about that with. This is years ago now, though. That somebody saw me do it and they found it weird that I do the warm-up, but then I always stop. And I start the stroke from a standstill rather than from doing my ovals. Like the capital A, for example, I would do this, then you stop, and do the A. Unless there is one thing that I do specifically with the A sometimes, and I think this just stems from when I started doing Spencerian and Ornamental Penmanship, I would do the A. Whoa, that is not a very nice A. But I would always do it with the horizontal entry. Neither of those are very good. But that got so comfortable for me back then that now sometimes I will do the horizontal entry or the horizontal oval in the air and then touch down moving, but that's one of the only instances that I do it. I did indeed, Ojasmith. I did indeed. I do it that way. It is so hard to not do entries or not do wind-up ovals. Fozzie said, favorite on the Discord. Sweet. I will add it into the list of considerations. What do I only got? What is today? Tuesday? I got 5 days. I gotta decide if I want to. I probably won't do it. I won't film it all beforehand. I'll post it, and then I'll do all the other stuff after I post it, I think. I'm not usually one to prepare content for social media, which I would love to be one of those people, but I'm not one of those people. Content is hard. It's for some of the things, for example, it's like that's one of the things I liked about dictionary.com, like the word of the day, because it wasn't something that I could just plan a whole bunch and then have them sort of auto post. It was a challenge that I was having people do with me, and I need to get back into it. But every day every day you get the word. You can't like pre-do the work. You can do the work afterwards. You can wait till the week is done and then go back and do them all, but you can't pre-do content. So similar to Sixthling and Sunday, I like choosing the signature and then I post it, and then while you guys are practicing it, I am also practicing it. Where like I post it the first day, I do the breakdown. Sometimes I'll do the breakdown. I'll record the breakdown like at the same time as I decide to post the thing. I'll pre-do the breakdown, but not usually the actual written video. So I'm practicing and working on it the same time as everybody else is practicing and working on it. So the timing and whatnot is a little more realistic. Another challenge, you say. Write the word styles, but with no lifts between the Y and the L. Ooh! Okay, so you don't know this about me, Brian. I honestly prefer doing descenders immediately into ascenders. Without stopping. Like where I guess most people, we talked about this, was it the last stream or maybe the stream before that? Like standard would be, standard would be to do like that type of a Y, or if you're gonna do the descended looped Y, to go there. And then I would never feel comfortable lifting here if I did this variation. I would always do this variation if I was gonna do a lift. But going from Y into L is, my ascenders are the best when I do it from a descender, always. I don't know why, it's weird, but I use the wind-ups as sort of visualizing where I'm going as I'm doing things, and to ensure that my forearm, as far as wind-up, that my forearm is in the right spot, so I know where my range of movement is gonna be, because I know I don't have a very big like writing zone. My range is quite small, unfortunately. I wish I could stretch this skin out so I had a little bit more range, but I don't have a very big range. So I do use the warm-ups for that. But yeah, for descender into ascender, I would prefer to write style that way. If I wasn't gonna do that variation of the Y. We would do something like this. That ascender didn't come out the greatest, but I've always liked going from descenders into ascenders. Thank you for your consideration, second in chair, Mr. Vice President. Wow. Just second VP works. Oh, so you're saying also don't lift at the X height of the L. Ooh, okay, that does complicate things a little bit. Okay. So we have S, T, shade on the L or no shade on the L? Doing a shade without stopping at the baseline is hard. I'll try. I gotta make my L a little bit bigger. It's almost a no shade. Tiny shade. it's just nuts. It doesn't feel very good. But it's doable. It just feels really crazy and risky. Okay, so what if we don't lift for the whole thing? S all the way to E, no lifts at all. Which means we gotta do a weird entry to the T to hide that lift. Can we do that if we're gonna shade the T? Oh, I lifted. There. Obviously we lifted to cross the T and I lost my hairline in the middle there, but we got a nice little shade on the L. Yeah, no lifts. Don't breathe either. I think most people probably wouldn't breathe anyway because they're concentrating so much. Just like a dancer. That is very weird. It goes against all of my trained habits. But it doesn't feel crazy. The only thing that is missing is I would like to put that little tick on the S. And I don't think I can I do that without lifting? I don't think so. I do think with the S, I might have to do the variation of the S that goes like, and cuts through that way. Potentially I might like that better, because I don't like the way that looks down there without having a bead or something on the S. But I could keep it going. That worked. Then you get a little bit of something there. No lifts at all. That was that's a neat little challenge. We'll write the word no lifts without lifts. I didn't put a space between no lifts, but that's okay. Ah, nip snap. Because my hand is weird. So many nib snaps today. fireworks, as somebody said earlier. Whoops, I lifted. I was gonna try to do the whole thing without lift, but I lifted after the G. With that, everybody, I'm gonna call it a night. This has been a fun one. This was a good one. Good talks, good little mini rants and things. Huge thank you to the chat. You guys are being super awesome today and keeping the conversation going. What? They're just swinging. It's almost been 3 hours. I've come to the conclusion that if I go for 1 hour, Otis Sweeney will be unhappy. If I go for 2 hours, she'll be unhappy. If I go for 3 hours, she'll be unhappy. If I end at 4 hours, she'll be unhappy. No matter when I end the stream, Otis Sweeney's auto response. I feel like her computer just has an auto response where if I say, we're gonna call it an end there, if her computer picks up on that audio, it automatically posts, what? So soon? 4 hours is fine. Four hours is a good time. But no blacklight tonight. I don't actually know what my gray paper is somewhere else because I've been cleaning up my desk. And I am tired tonight. I gotta go have dinner still. I didn't eat before the stream. Oops. Or make tea, which is bananas. I always make tea. How long are your sessions usually, Fozzie? You guys go for quite a while, don't you? I think in the early days of my late night lives, they were always sort of 3-4 hours, and I don't hit the blacklight as much anymore. And I do apologize for that. But maybe one day we'll get back to the Blacklight Live days. Thank you very much, everybody. That was fun. I do apologize to Otis Winnie for cutting it off a little short, but it was a good day. I feel like we've had a lot of great conversations today. One of the main reasons I'm cutting it now and not going into blacklight. This nib I know is going to drive me crazy on the paper that I use for blacklighting with the blacklight ink, and I don't want to deal with it because, I mean, nib in general is giving me a tough time today, and that's my own fault. But yeah, today was a really fun one. I had a great time. We'll be back again next Tuesday. I'm going to try to have a theme. If you have suggestions for Canon signatures, like Fozzie posted hers on the Discord, jump in the description down below. Join the Creatrium. It's my fun little community of penmanship stuff. If you have any questions that we didn't cover in this video or in any other of my videos, ask them in the on the Creatrium or in the Creatrium, and we can get to it. Blacklight next week, promise. I can't promise. Remember the deal back in the day, Otis Sweeney? The deal was we hit blacklight when I forgot what time it was, and we just automatically, it would just surprise me. That hasn't happened, and it hasn't been your guys' fault or anything. But back in the day, midnight just used to show up. It was all of a sudden midnight. I think main reason we haven't hit midnight in a while is because I've been doing very, just playtime, very freedom things. Maybe next week I'll try to do something a little more structured where I have a story or something like that that I'll create. Mr. Second VP. We'll get there eventually. It'll happen again. We'll get back into the swing of that world. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Like I said already, it's been fun. Make sure that you're falling in love with this process. It's a fun process. Don't forget, everybody, that life should be just a bit of silliness, really. Good night.